She thought she knew the man she married. But on their luxury honeymoon, deep in paradise, the mask slipped. And what came next was no accident. She died before she ever made it home. Welcome to True Crime's Altar, where every sin is punished, every betrayal has a cost, and every soul must answer to the truth. Like, comment, and subscribe, because these are stories the guilty hoped would stay buried. The autumn air cast a bronze glow over Midtown Atlanta, where the penthouse atop the Linwood residences shimmered against the skyline. Nalia Pierce stood quietly by the floor-to-ceiling window, swirling a glass of rose in her hand. Her fingers absent-mindedly grazed the freshwater pearl necklace gifted by her father just weeks earlier for her 24th birthday. The occasion was a benefit gala celebrating the grand opening of a new pediatric cardiac center, a project backed by the Pierce Foundation. The room overflowed with Georgia's most powerful figures, but all eyes drifted toward Nalia, the only child of billionaire investor Treston Pierce. A recent Spelman graduate with honors in nonprofit leadership, Nalia worked closely with her father's charitable foundation. She avoided clubs, influencers, and headlines, choosing instead to channel her energy into real causes. But on this particular night, beneath the crystal chandeliers and string quartet, she felt the spotlight in full. And then she noticed him. At the far side of the bar, a tall man in a custom midnight blue tuxedo carried himself like someone used to the weight of expectation. His fade was fresh, his skin smooth, his posture elegant and focused. He laughed with a group of local developers, exuding the ease of a man who understood power and presence. Nalia leaned closer, watching. "That's Langston Cole," her father's voice came from beside her. "Supposed to be the next big thing on the investment scene. Runs his own firm, Colebridge Capital. They say his portfolio tripled this year." Langston turned slightly, catching Nalia's gaze across the room. His lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. A few minutes later, he was beside her, offering a glass. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, voice low and warm, touched with a slight Gulf Coast drawl. "But I couldn't let the evening end without meeting you." He introduced himself, managing partner of a high-risk venture firm. 36, graduated top of his class from Morehouse. 10 years in Atlanta's financial trenches. They spoke of architecture, of healing spaces for children, of her work with refugee families, and his passion for financial literacy in underserved communities. Nalia was captivated, not by status, but by depth. He didn't boast. He listened. And when he did speak, it was with precision, like every word had weight. Treston watched their interaction from a distance, reserved. Langston's credentials checked out. His demeanor was polished, but there was something beneath the surface, something he couldn't name, that made him wary. Still, his daughter smiled in a way he hadn't seen since her mother passed. That was enough for now. Nalia left the gala with a gentle ache in her chest and a new number in her phone. She had no idea what was already in motion. Nor did she see Langston step into his Mercedes later that night, press a call, and say quietly, "She's perfect. Exactly what we were hoping for. Soft, trusting. This is going to be smooth." The next 3 months unfolded like a storybook. Every morning began with deliveries of her favorite sunflowers. Langston seemed to anticipate her thoughts, arriving with tickets to exclusive art installations, sending out-of-print books from her reading list, texting the exact moment she needed encouragement. At benefit dinners, he worked the room like a natural, charming her father's board members with fluency in both finance and impact. Even Treston Pierce, cautious by nature, began to ease, especially after a bold stock tip from Langston earned his company a generous return. "You were right about him," he told Nalia one afternoon. "That young man's sharp." In December, Langston gifted her an antique amethyst ring, tucked in a velvet box. "It's like the one my grandmother wore," he whispered, watching her expression soften. The setting fit her hand as if it had been waiting for her all along. He spoke often of growing up in a small town in southern Mississippi, of his dreams to escape generational poverty, of the grind that got him here. She found his mix of vulnerability and confidence magnetic. In February, he flew her to Paris. Dinner in a closed terrace atop the Eiffel Tower. A ring from Van Cleef. A flawless proposal. Nalia cried openly, nodding yes before he could finish the sentence. Their engagement flooded social media in seconds. Friends called it destiny. Strangers called it goals. Wedding planning became a whirlwind of fittings and site visits, but Nalia floated through it all in a kind of wonder. With every shared moment, she grew more certain Langston wasn't just her love. He was her home. Tristan at first wanted due diligence. "Let's do the usual vetting," he said. But Nalia begged. "Daddy, I know his heart. He loves me." And against his better judgment, he relented. "If he ever hurts you," he murmured, embracing her, "I'll make sure he never sees daylight again." The wedding was set for early June. After the ceremony, the couple would leave for their honeymoon on the coast of Kauai. Langston booked the royal suite at one of the island's most exclusive resorts. Summer hit Georgia like a furnace. On the day of the wedding, the historic chapel in Inman Park was dressed in orchids and white calla lilies. Nearly 400 guests filled the pews, waiting to witness a union that felt legendary. Nalia, dressed in a silk gown designed by a reclusive Ghanaian couturier, paused in front of the mirror. Her curls were pinned beneath a delicate veil. Her diamond-studded tiara once worn by generations of women in her mother's family. Tristan saw her and broke down in tears. "You look just like your mother," he whispered. "She would have been so proud." The ceremony began at noon. As Nalia glided down the aisle, arm in arm with her father, the room hushed. Langston stood at the altar in a black Tom Ford tux, his smile tender, his eyes filled with what appeared to be devotion. The reception at the Grant Ballroom dripped with elegance. Candlelight, silver flatware, live jazz. The newlyweds shared their first dance to Donny Hathaway's A Song for You. But some guests noted the absence of Langston's family. "Car accident years ago," he told them, voice low with grief. "Only child. Nobody left but me." His sorrow touched everyone. He was an orphan who had found joy again. A self-made man with nothing to gain but love. By midnight, Nalia was radiant. She barely noticed Langston's brief disappearances for phone calls. She thought nothing of the rush to sign legal documents just before the ceremony. And when they slipped away into the limo, petals scattering around them, she kissed her father goodbye. "I'll call you every night," she promised. Tristan waved as the car pulled away, his chest tight with a feeling he couldn't name. At the private terminal, Langston's jet waited. 5 hours later, they arrived in paradise. Their suite on the cliffs of Kauai overlooked the endless Pacific. Floor-to-ceiling windows, infinity pool, champagne on arrival. The first few days were dreamlike. Breakfasts on the lanai, late morning massages, afternoons by the water. But by day 4, things began to shift. Langston grew curt. He locked himself in the study with his laptop. He declined her request for surfing lessons. "Too dangerous," he said. He vetoed her booking for a sailing excursion. Even a solo walk on the beach earned a sharp look. "Ask me first next time," he said. Then came the argument. Nalia had wired a large donation to a children's literacy fund, something they'd discussed many times. But Langston exploded. "You had no right to move that kind of money without telling me." It was the first time she saw something frightening in him. That night, as he nursed a drink at the bar, she overheard him on the phone. "No, she don't know. I've got access. Just give me another day." When he noticed her watching, he smiled too quickly. But the coldness in his eyes made her stomach knot. Each day after brought more reasons to worry. He took her phone, claiming it was glitching, and handed her another just for emergencies. Emails to her father were now routed through him. Her spa appointments required his approval. And still, at times, he played the doting husband. Sunset dinners, expensive gifts, apologies whispered into her hair. But the tenderness was a mask that didn't always stay on. One evening, she returned from the hotel sauna to find him going through her personal journal and foundation papers. "You're reckless with these accounts," he muttered, "throwing money into causes like it's monopoly." The glint in his eyes was no longer love. It was control. By day 10, she was scared enough to try calling her father from the suite's landline. Langston intercepted the receiver. "I said no calls without me," he growled, gripping the phone until his knuckles whitened. That night, Nalia didn't sleep. Her breath caught at every creak of the floor. Staff began to notice. A housekeeper saw her wiping tears from the pillow. A bartender noticed how she asked permission before ordering anything, like she feared getting it wrong. But no one intervened, not in a place where guests wore diamonds to the beach. That evening, nothing seemed off. The sky blushed purple as the sun dipped below the waves. Nalia folded their clothes in silence. She had packed everything except the envelope now resting on the vanity, a handwritten letter to her father, tucked beneath her silk wrap. Langston returned from his run earlier than expected. His skin glistened with sweat, but his face looked hollow. He spotted the envelope and froze. "What's that?" he asked, his voice sharp. Nalia tried to hide it, but it was too late. He snatched it from her hand and began to read. Every line was a wound. Her suspicions, her fear, her plea, "Daddy, I don't feel safe." "You lied to me," she screamed, yanking her arm away. "You played me for a fool. You married me for money." The words struck like bullets, and what he did next would shatter every illusion.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
He hit her. The blow sent her crashing backward. Her skull struck the edge of the marble vanity. And then, silence. The darkness he chose in that moment was final, calculated, cold, and beyond forgiveness. Some betrayals don't just break trust, they break the world. In that room, beneath the luxury and lies, love turned into murder with one fatal choice. Langston stood still for a moment, staring at her body, the crimson slowly staining the cream carpet beneath her. A heavy quiet fell over the suite. The sunset had deepened into night, and the waves outside crashed against the rocks in rhythmic defiance. His chest rose and fell, but his face showed no panic, only calculation. He moved like someone trained, slowly, methodically. He changed her into a swimsuit, pulled out her makeup bag, and scattered its contents around the bathroom floor. He turned on the shower, wetting the tiles and part of her legs. He placed her body carefully, arranging it at just the right angle to suggest a slip and fall. He tossed the bloodied wrap into the fireplace and watched it burn. Then he rehearsed his tone in the mirror, grief-stricken, frantic, devastated. At 10:30 p.m., he called hotel services. "My wife, she fell. I stepped out for a minute and she wanted to shower before bed. Please, I need help." By the time the paramedics arrived, Langston was crouched beside her, soaking her hair with a washcloth, his hands trembling, eyes wet with tears that came too easily. "I was only gone for a minute," he repeated over and over. "I came back and found her like this." The police were notified within 20 minutes. Detectives Mahalia Drew and Simeon Ricks were the only investigators still on duty that night at Kauai's local precinct. Neither of them could have known they were walking into the most high-profile case of the year. The luxury, the money, the pristine crime scene, everything felt too neat. Nalia Pearskill was declared dead on arrival. Her body was taken to the island morgue just before midnight. Tristan Pierce had already boarded a jet the moment he received the news. But Langston? He stayed back, quietly erasing every trace of what had really happened. Detective Drew had handled plenty of accidental deaths, but something about the suite made her skin prickle. It was too polished, too orchestrated, and Langston Cole's demeanor was just a little too perfect. She walked the perimeter of the room, noting each detail: the marble table, the shape of the bloodstain, the smell of recent cleaning agents that hadn't quite settled. Rick spoke to the staff, gathering impressions. Langston sat in the living area wrapped in a robe, his eyes bloodshot. He clutched a handkerchief and recounted his version of events in a low, trembling voice. He sounded believable. Too believable. "Something ain't adding up," Drew murmured, crouching near the vanity. "That bloodstain, it didn't come from a fall. And it's not fresh." She stood and looked closer. There were faint pink smudges on the vanity's edge, blood that had been partially scrubbed. Meanwhile, Rix was gathering witness statements. Maria Sosa, the maid assigned to the couple's suite, was visibly shaken. "Mrs. Cole seemed scared," she said softly. "Yesterday she was crying, and I saw marks on her wrist. Faint, but there." Langston's timeline soon unraveled. He claimed to have gone for a jog around 9 p.m., but camera logs had him back inside much earlier. Worse, the hallway surveillance near the suite had mysteriously gone offline for exactly 1 hour. "There was a system reboot," the security manager said nervously. "Total fluke. Rare. We didn't catch it until after." The bartender added another crack in the mask. He'd overheard Langston on the phone the night before, talking numbers and deadlines like a man on edge. He said something like, "It's handled. Just need the documents in order." The bartender remembered the shift in Langston's tone. Cold. Robotic. By sunrise, forensic investigators were combing the suite. Water spray in the bathroom didn't match the body's position. Shards of glass, possibly from a phone, were swept beneath the sink. Drew opened the wardrobe and found a locked safe. Langston claimed to have forgotten the code, but hotel staff confirmed he'd accessed the safe twice the day before. Tristan arrived by mid-morning, hollow-eyed and staggering under the weight of grief. "She tried to call me yesterday," he whispered to Drew, "but the call didn't go through. Just cut off." The detective's instincts screamed this wasn't a mistake. It was a trap, cleanly executed but sloppy around the edges. They had a web. Now they needed a spider. She requested Langston's financial records. Late that evening, under UV light, new evidence emerged. Blood, previously wiped, still clung to the corners of the marble table. Fibers from Nalia's blouse were found embedded in the carpet. Rix opened the hotel dumpster and found something hidden deep beneath discarded towels, a torn silk blouse, splattered with faint droplets. One of the sleeves had been nearly ripped at the seam. Mahalia Drew sat down at her laptop. Within an hour, Langston Cole's financial empire crumbled. The firm, Coldridge Capital, was smoke and mirrors. Its address led to a virtual office. The bank accounts were shallow. Creditors were circling like vultures. Then came the bombshell. $5 million, Rick said, laying a file on the table. Life insurance. Signed the day before the wedding. Beneficiary, Langston Cole. Maria, the maid, remembered something else. The night before, I saw him carry papers out to the fire pit near the beach. Burned them. Security teams combed backup servers and recovered deleted hallway footage. At 9:15 p.m., Langston re-entered the suite, sweat on his neck, clothes wrinkled. At 10 o'clock, he appeared at the bar, calm, controlled, calculated. Later that night, he was caught on camera speaking into his phone near the lobby fountain. "It's done," he said. "Have the paperwork ready." Lab results confirmed the blood on the vanity belonged to Nalia. Skin cells found under her fingernails matched Langston. Defensive wounds were scattered across her wrists and collarbone. And then there were the faint bruises along her neck, signs of strangulation pressure that didn't match any slip. Digging deeper, the detectives uncovered more. Langston Cole wasn't from Mississippi. He grew up outside Gary, Indiana. He had a sealed juvenile record, then later arrested for fraud, wire scams, and multiple aliases. He bounced across cities for over a decade, leaving wreckage in his wake. This was the first time his schemes had ended in blood. He built this like a chess game, Drew muttered, examining wedding photos. Met her, courted her, got the paperwork in place, then cashed out. Bank records exposed a series of offshore transfers, laundered sums hidden across 5 countries. Just before meeting Nalia, Langston had received a massive wire, payment from an anonymous lender. A waitress at the resort added another damning piece. Mrs. Cole, she asked me to mail something. A letter. I saw it in her hand. But Mr. Cole intercepted me in the lobby. Later that evening, a hidden panel in the suite's dressing room revealed a stash, forged passports, burner phones, forged documents, even a draft of a will, written in Nalia's handwriting, but fake. Analysts confirmed the pen pressure was wrong, the loops inconsistent. It was all part of the playbook. Mahalia stood before the board filled with evidence, maps, photographs, timelines. He almost got away with it, she said. The final piece emerged from Nali's confiscated phone. One unsent text. Daddy, I'm scared. He's not who he says he is. The device had been blocked. He'd shut it off before the message could leave. Kauai's Financial Crimes Division worked overnight. They tracked his entire fraud history back to 2003. Small cons, bigger scams, fake marriages, empty ventures. Until now, it had only been theft. But desperation had changed him, and desperation without conscience is a blade with no handle. When a man trades his soul for salvation and chooses blood to buy freedom, no debt he owed could ever be worth the life he took. The evidence was overwhelming, but the final answer still loomed. Why murder? Why now? Detective Rick sifted through the financial logs again, this time focusing on the last 60 days. And that's when the full scope of Langston's desperation came into view. He owed over $15 million. Years of reckless stock market speculation, secret gambling debts, private loans from unsavory sources. He was drowning. And the people he owed weren't the kind that waited patiently. He was boxed in, Rick muttered. He had no way out. Except her. Drew opened Langston's laptop, which had been seized from the suite. Hidden behind layers of encrypted files was a digital blueprint, step by step. Phase 1. Infiltrate elite circles. He had created an entire backstory, the Ivy League education, the investment firm, a sterling reputation. All fake. Phase 2. Target someone young, wealthy, idealistic. Someone who wouldn't look too deeply. Nalia Pierce had been a bullseye. Beautiful, soft-hearted, completely unaware of how predatory charm could be. Phase 3. Gain her trust, propose fast, marry quicker. And Phase 4. Profit from her death. A clause buried in their prenuptial agreement, written in sophisticated legal language, gave Langston control over certain Pierce Foundation assets in the event of her accidental death. The $5 million life insurance policy? Just the tip of the iceberg. He stood to inherit stock options, property rights, and voting control in 2 subsidiaries, all packaged under the guise of marital consolidation. The documents made it clear he hadn't lost control. He'd never been out of control. Every step, every smile, every kiss, it was rehearsed. Engineered. For profit. Drew turned to Ricks. He was willing to sell everything, even his own soul, and when Nalia found out, he decided she was collateral. They traced back his final meetings before the wedding. Surveillance caught him in multiple restaurants in downtown Atlanta, always with the same sharply dressed man. After facial recognition and background checks, the man was identified as a broker for a dangerous offshore lending group. Their last message to Langston, found on his encrypted phone, 1 month. Or blood repays blood. That same man was spotted again on the beach in Kauai. A camera hidden in the palm trees captured their body language, tense, deliberate, with Langston nodding gravely. Treston Pierce, after reviewing the investigation files, was a shell of the man he'd once been. He ran his hand down his face and whispered, "She tried to warn me. She tried." A handwriting expert confirmed that the forged will, supposedly drafted the day before Nalia's death, was a forgery with stunning precision. But there were tiny flaws, letter formations, inconsistent slant that exposed it. Drew stepped back and looked at the caseboard. He had everything. Motive, means, the escape route, all of it. She closed her eyes. But the mask cracked the moment she saw him for who he was. Rix nodded slowly. And once she saw, he had to act. Because if she spoke, he'd lose everything. A final transaction was flagged. Langston had booked a private flight to Sao Tome and Principe, a country without an extradition treaty. Departure date, 2 days after the murder. Classic play, said Rix. Disappear, change names, resurface in 5 years. But now they had him. Detectives prepared for the interrogation. The room was simple. Glass walls. Quiet. No distractions. Langston Cole sat at the table, dressed in hotel-issued loungewear, eyes dull but lips set in a tight, neutral line. Mahalia Drew entered first, carrying a folder. "Let's walk through it again," she said evenly. "You said you went for a jog at 9, came back after 10, and found her." He nodded. She pulled out the first photo. A time-stamped still from the hotel's back entrance. Langston returning at 9:15, sweaty, eyes darting. "Strange," she said. "That's not after 10. That's an hour before." Langston blinked slowly. "I guess I misremembered. It was a blur." Next came the image of the marble vanity, dried blood still crusted at the corner. Drew placed it carefully in front of him. Alongside it, lab results. Nalia's blood. Her skin cells beneath his fingernails. Traces of his sweat on the straps of her torn blouse. Rix entered the room and sat across from him. "We spoke to your ex-associates in Indiana. Seems you've had a habit of lying, and a history of disappearing after the money dries up." Langston's jaw flexed. His fingers tapped lightly on the table. More files. The forged will. The intercepted letter. Testimonies from the maid, the bartender, the waitress, and finally, the insurance policy. "5 million, Drew said, her voice like ice. "Signed the day before the wedding. Clever." Langston swallowed hard. "In the offshore accounts," Rix added. "We know where the money's going. We know who threatened you. But what we don't understand." "I didn't mean to kill her." The words came out hoarse, broken. "She wasn't supposed to die." Drew leaned in. "Then explain it. All of it." And that's when the dam broke. Langston began to talk. He told them about the debts, the syndicate, the threats, how the plan came together, how he studied Nalia's habits, gained her trust, set everything in motion. "She started getting suspicious. I saw it in her eyes. Then that letter. I panicked. She said I married her for money, and I lost it." His voice cracked. "I hit her. She fell. The sound her head made." He trailed off, burying his face in his hands. Drew wrote everything down, her face unmoving. She'd heard confessions before, but none so elaborate. none so haunting. Behind a two-way mirror, Tristan Pierce listened. Tears slid silently down his cheeks. His shoulders trembled, not just from grief, but from rage. Rage at himself for ignoring his instincts, for trusting a smile with no soul behind it. Langston was processed and charged before sunrise. As he stood to be handcuffed, his shoulders hunched. His face, once proud, was now hollow. The charm, the elegance, the mask, gone. The truth had stripped him bare. There is no wealth worth killing for, no lie so beautiful it can silence the scream of a soul betrayed. When greed becomes God, love becomes prey, and even paradise turns red. The courtroom was packed. Langston Cole's trial had drawn national attention, a story too tragic to ignore. A fairy tale wedding, a luxury honeymoon, and a young woman whose life had been exchanged for profit. The prosecutor moved methodically, presenting the timeline like clockwork: forged credentials, manipulated trust, fraudulent documents, the calculated cover-up. Expert witnesses, handwriting analysts, financial investigators, forensic specialists brought piece after piece of the puzzle to light. And every piece painted the same story: a man who had loved not the woman, but what she was worth. The defense tried to paint Langston as a victim of desperation, a man pushed too far by dangerous creditors, but the jury saw through it, especially after hearing the last letter Nalia had written, the one her husband had tried to destroy. "My father always told me to believe the best in people," she wrote. "But now I'm scared. Langston is not who he says he is. He doesn't love me. He loves money. Please, help me get away from him." Tristan Pierce took the stand as the final witness. His voice was low, firm, hollowed by grief, but steady. He told them how Langston had seduced not only his daughter, but their entire family, how he played every card perfectly until it came time to kill. Some jurors turned away. It took only 3 hours to reach a unanimous verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder, fraud, forgery, financial deception, destruction of evidence. The judge handed down a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Langston stood motionless as the words were read. His face betrayed no emotion. But when the guards led him away, he turned once, just once, toward Tristan Pierce and whispered, "I'm sorry." But some apologies come too late. Some wounds run too deep. After the trial, Tristan founded the Nalia Grace Pierce Foundation, a center dedicated to protecting and empowering victims of financial abuse and domestic control. "My daughter always wanted to help people," he said during the opening ceremony. "Now her name will mean safety. Her story will save lives." Detectives Mahalia Drew and Simeon Ricks attended the ceremony quietly. They didn't speak much. But later, as they stood by the portrait of Nalia that hung above the foundation's front desk, Mahalia said, "What haunts me most is how easy it was, how fast a lie became a love story, and then a death sentence." Ricks replied, "Love makes us open. But monsters, they take advantage of that." A year later, they received a letter from prison. Langston wrote of guilt, nightmares, and regret. "I see her face every night," he said. "I see the moment she knew who I really was. I will never forget what I took from her." Drew folded the letter and filed it away. She didn't believe remorse could ever reverse evil, and even if it could, it wouldn't bring Nalia back. The case file was marked closed, but the scars would remain forever. If you ever find yourself in a relationship where your voice is silenced, your freedom stripped, your instincts dimmed, please speak. You are not crazy. You are not alone. Love should never feel like fear, and no amount of loyalty can justify staying where your soul is slowly dying. If you're in danger, reach out. Tell someone. Go to the police. Seek shelter. Your life is worth more than silence. Because no one ever plans to become a victim, but silence is where monsters thrive. Let Nalia's story be a warning of how quickly love can become a cage and how freedom must sometimes be fought for. Thank you for watching True Crimes Alter. If this story moved you, drop a comment below and tell us what you think. Do you believe Langston ever loved her? Should desperation ever be considered in sentencing? We want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to True Crimes Alter for more stories that expose the hidden sins behind beautiful facades. Because every betrayal has a cost, and every soul must answer to the truth.